Hashtag a single credit for a space station. What he found inside was beyond imagination. Marcus Chen stared at the auction listing on his cracked tablet screen, certain he was hallucinating from too much recycled air and synthetic coffee. The holographic display flickered weakly in the dim light of his cramped quarters aboard the cargo hauler Distant Thunder. Salvage Station Omega-7, complete with mining equipment, habitation modules, and quantum processors. Starting bid, 1 credit. No reserve. He rubbed his eyes and read it again. 1 credit. For an entire space station. Marcus had been scraping together salvage runs in the Terran frontier for 3 years, ever since the banking collapse wiped out his family's shipping business. His savings account held exactly 47 credits, barely enough for a decent meal at most stations. But 1 credit? Even he could manage that. The listing details were sparse. Omega-7 sat in the Kepler 442 system, orbiting a dead world that had been strip-mined decades ago. Previous owner deceased, no heirs, station abandoned for 12 years. The usual warnings about potentially hazardous materials and voided warranties filled the fine print. Marcus glanced around his quarters. The walls were closing in more each day, and Captain Rodriguez had made it clear that his contract wouldn't be renewed after this run. The man had cited economic pressures, but Marcus knew the truth: human crews were becoming obsolete. The Galactic Trade Consortium preferred automated systems and alien contractors who worked for a fraction of human wages. His finger hovered over the bid button. What was the worst that could happen? He loses 1 credit and gains nothing but disappointment. That seemed like a fair trade for a chance at independence. He placed the bid. To his amazement, no one outbid him. When the auction closed 6 hours later, Marcus Chen was the proud owner of Salvage Station Omega-7. The deed transfer arrived in his inbox along with navigation coordinates and a terse message from the auction house wishing him luck. 3 weeks later, Marcus piloted his rented shuttle through the outer marker buoys of the Kepler 442 system. The journey had cost him 30 of his remaining credits, leaving him with enough money for basic supplies and fuel for the return trip. If the station proved worthless, he'd be stranded. The dead world of Kepler 442b hung before him like a diseased eye, its surface scarred with massive excavation craters. Orbital debris from the mining operation still drifted in lazy patterns around the planet. Most of it looked worthless: twisted metal, depleted ore containers, chunks of processed rock. But there, against the star field, Marcus spotted his prize. Salvage Station Omega-7 was larger than he'd expected. The central hub stretched nearly 2 kilometers across, with 6 major habitat arms extending outward like the spokes of a wheel. Solar collectors and communication arrays bristled from the outer hull, though many showed obvious damage from micrometeorites and neglect. Despite its battered appearance, the station's basic structure seemed intact. Marcus docked his shuttle at the main airlock and reviewed the atmosphere readings on his suit display. The station still had power, minimal, but functional. Life support showed as operational in most sections, though he wouldn't trust it without his environmental suit for the first inspection. The airlock cycled through its sequence with surprising efficiency. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows down the main corridor as Marcus stepped aboard his new property. The deck plates felt solid beneath his boots, and the artificial gravity seemed stable at roughly 3/4 Earth standard. His first stop was the command center, located at the hub's core. The blast doors opened at his approach, apparently recognizing his new ownership status. Inside, banks of monitors displayed system readouts in multiple alien languages alongside standard Terran script. Most systems showed green status lights, though several warned of maintenance issues and power conservation modes. Marcus pulled up the station manifest on the central display. His breath caught in his throat as he scrolled through the inventory. Omega-7 wasn't just a salvage platform, it was a fully equipped deep space mining and processing facility. The previous owner, a Terran industrialist named Harrison Webb, had invested heavily in cutting-edge equipment before his death. The station contained 3 industrial matter printers capable of producing complex machinery from raw materials. The quantum processing core could crack molecular bonds and reassemble matter at the atomic level. Most impressive was the main cargo bay, which housed a fully operational asteroid mining ship designed for extended autonomous operation. But it was the sealed storage bay that really caught Marcus's attention. According to the manifest, Bay 7 contained classified research materials and required special authorization to access. The previous owner had locked it down with military-grade security protocols. Marcus spent the next several hours exploring the station's 6 habitat arms. Living quarters for a crew of 50, recreational facilities, hydroponic gardens, even a small medical bay with an automated surgery suite. Everything was dusty and showed signs of abandonment, but the basic infrastructure remained sound. By the time he'd completed his initial survey, Marcus was exhausted but amazed. The station was worth millions of credits, possibly tens of millions. The quantum processing equipment alone could set him up for life if he sold it to the right buyer. But something nagged at him about that sealed storage bay and its classified contents. He made his way back to the command center and pulled up the security protocols for Bay 7. The access requirements were extensive: biometric scans, multi-factor authentication, and something called a Terran Defense Authorization Code. Marcus had never heard of such a thing, but the system seemed to think he qualified for access as the station's new owner. The journey to Bay 7 took him through sections of the station he hadn't yet explored. The corridors here were different: reinforced bulkheads, additional blast doors, military-style warning signs in multiple languages. Whatever Webb had stored here, he'd taken serious precautions to protect it. The final security checkpoint scanned Marcus's retinas, fingerprints, and DNA before grudgingly accepting his ownership credentials. The massive vault door split apart with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a chamber beyond that defied his expectations. Bay 7 wasn't a storage facility, it was a laboratory. Banks of sealed containment units lined the walls, each one marked with symbols Marcus didn't recognize. At the center of the room stood a single pedestal holding what appeared to be a metal sphere roughly the size of a basketball. The sphere's surface shifted and rippled like liquid mercury, though it maintained its perfect spherical shape. Marcus approached the pedestal cautiously, his scanner detecting energy signatures unlike anything in the standard databases. The sphere seemed to pulse with its own internal light, casting dancing shadows across the laboratory walls. A nearby terminal displayed a continuous stream of data in formats he'd never seen before. A thick folder sat beside the terminal, marked with Webb's personal seal and a handwritten note: "For whoever finds this, humanity's future may depend on what you do next." Marcus opened the folder with trembling hands. The first page contained a letter in Webb's distinctive handwriting, dated just days before his reported death in a shuttle accident. "If you're reading this, then I'm dead and my station has been sold at auction," the letter began. "I pray that a human found it rather than one of the consortium's alien partners. What you see before you is the most important discovery in human history, and possibly the most dangerous." The letter went on to explain Webb's secret research project. 5 years ago, his mining operation had uncovered an artifact buried deep in Kepler 442b's crust. The sphere wasn't built by any known civilization, its technology was so advanced that human science could barely detect its existence, let alone understand its function. Webb had spent years studying the artifact with the help of a small team of trusted researchers. What they discovered changed everything they thought they knew about the universe. The sphere was some kind of data storage device, containing the accumulated knowledge of a species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and matter transformation on a scale that dwarfed even the most advanced alien civilizations. But the knowledge came with a warning. The sphere's creators had fled from something, a force they called the consuming dark, that swept across galaxies, destroying everything in its path. Their entire civilization had been reduced to refugees, hiding their knowledge in artifacts like this one before vanishing into the void. According to their records, the consuming dark was still out there, still spreading. And it was heading toward the Milky Way. Marcus read the letter 3 times before its implications fully sank in. If Webb was right, every species in their galaxy was in mortal danger from a threat they couldn't even comprehend. The sphere contained not just advanced technology, but potentially the only hope of survival. Webb had died before he could act on his discovery. His research team had been killed in what the authorities ruled a series of unfortunate accidents, but Webb suspected assassination. Someone, or something, didn't want this knowledge to become public. The letter's final paragraph made Marcus's blood run cold. I've detected long-range scanner probes in this system, ships using technology that doesn't match any known species. They're looking for something, and I believe they're looking for this. The consortium has been infiltrated by agents of the dark, though they don't realize it yet. Trust no one except other humans, and be very careful who you trust among them. Marcus set down the letter and stared at the sphere. Its surface continued to ripple and pulse, as if responding to his presence. According to Webb's notes, the artifact would only activate for species that matched certain criteria: intelligence, adaptability, and something the notes called evolutionary potential. Humans, apparently, qualified. The sphere began to glow brighter as Marcus reached toward it. Energy patterns danced across its surface, forming complex geometric shapes that seemed to convey meaning on some subliminal level. His hand stopped centimeters from the surface, hesitating. Once he touched it, there would be no going back. The knowledge contained within would change him, change humanity's place in the universe. But if Webb was right about the coming threat, they might not have a choice. Marcus took a deep breath and placed his palm against the sphere's surface. The universe exploded into light and sensation. Information flooded his mind at a rate that should have driven him insane, but somehow his consciousness expanded to accommodate it. He saw the rise and fall of countless civilizations, witnessed the birth and death of stars, understood the fundamental forces that shaped reality itself. And he saw the consuming dark. It was worse than Webb's letter had suggested. The dark wasn't just a destructive force, it was intelligent, purposeful, and utterly hostile to all forms of organic life. It had already consumed dozens of galaxies, growing stronger with each victory. The sphere's creators had been among the last to flee from its path, seeding the cosmos with their knowledge in hopes that some species might find a way to stop what they could not. The visions faded, leaving Marcus gasping on the laboratory floor. But the knowledge remained, burning bright in his mind. He understood now why Webb had been so careful, so paranoid. The power contained in the sphere could revolutionize human civilization, or destroy it if it fell into the wrong hands. Marcus struggled to his feet, his mind reeling with possibilities. The sphere's technology could give humanity defenses against the coming threat, but only if they could unite and prepare before the dark arrived. According to the artifact's projections, they had perhaps 50 years before the first scouts reached the Milky Way's outer rim. 50 years to transform human civilization from a collection of scattered colonies into something that could stand against a galactic plague. Marcus looked around the laboratory with new eyes. Every piece of equipment here could be reverse-engineered and improved using knowledge from the sphere. The quantum processors could be upgraded to handle matter transformation on a planetary scale. The mining ship could be retrofitted with faster-than-light drives that would make current technology look primitive. But first, he needed to ensure the knowledge survived. Webb's death hadn't been an accident, and Marcus suspected that whoever was responsible would come looking for the sphere eventually. He needed to create backups, hide copies of the data, and find trustworthy humans to help him prepare for what was coming. The station's communication array was still functional, though operating on minimal power. Marcus could send encrypted messages to contacts throughout the Terran colonies, carefully selecting individuals who might believe his story and help with the monumental task ahead. But as he prepared to leave the laboratory, movement on the security monitors caught his eye. 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, sleek, angular vessels that matched no design in any database. Their configuration was wrong somehow, as if they'd been built by minds that thought in fundamentally different patterns than any known species. The ships were moving toward the station with obvious hostile intent. Marcus's hand went to the sphere, its surface now cool and inert. The knowledge it had given him included defensive technologies far beyond anything humans had developed, but implementing them would take time he didn't have. The approaching ships would reach the station within hours. He activated the station's emergency protocols, sealing Bay 7 behind multiple blast doors and security fields. Then he made his way to the command center, his mind racing through possible strategies. The station's defensive systems were minimal, a few point defense lasers designed to clear debris, nothing that could stand against military-grade weapons. But the sphere's knowledge suggested other possibilities. The station's quantum processing core could be reconfigured as a weapon, though the process was extremely dangerous and would likely destroy the facility in the process. Marcus would have to find another way to protect humanity's newfound hope for survival. The approaching ships were sending no communications, making no demands for surrender. They simply moved toward the station with the patience of apex predators closing in on wounded prey. Marcus checked the station's automated systems one final time, uploading emergency data packets to hidden servers throughout human space. If he didn't survive the next few hours, at least some record of the sphere's knowledge would endure. Other humans would have to carry on the fight against the darkness that was coming for them all. Hashtag a single credit for a space station, what he found inside was beyond imagination. Marcus watched the enemy ships approach on the main display, their angular hulls gleaming with an oily iridescence that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The knowledge from the sphere told him these were scout vessels of the consuming dark, sent ahead to eliminate threats before the main force arrived. They had somehow detected the sphere's activation and come to investigate. 3 ships against an unarmed mining station should have been hopeless odds, but the sphere's knowledge had shown Marcus possibilities that human science hadn't yet imagined. The station's quantum processing core wasn't just a mining tool, it was a reality manipulation device that could alter the fundamental properties of matter and energy. Marcus raced through the station's corridors toward the engineering section, his mind processing design schematics that no human had ever conceived. The sphere's creators had been masters of what they called dimensional mechanics, the ability to fold spacetime and manipulate the barriers between parallel realities. Their technology worked by convincing the universe to temporarily forget certain laws of physics. The engineering bay housed the quantum core, a massive cylindrical chamber filled with exotic matter that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Under normal operation, the core broke down asteroids into component atoms and reassembled them into useful materials. But with the right modifications, it could do much more. Marcus began rewiring control systems with desperate efficiency, his hands moving with knowledge that wasn't entirely his own. The sphere's data included emergency protocols for situations exactly like this, last resort weapons that could destroy entire fleets but at terrible cost. The modifications would burn out the quantum core and likely tear the station apart in the process. The first enemy ship opened fire while Marcus was still working. Beams of coherent energy lanced across space, striking the station's outer hull with surgical precision. The attacks weren't meant to destroy, they were probing for weaknesses, testing the station's defenses before moving in for the kill. Marcus completed the final connection as the station shuddered under another barrage. Warning klaxons wailed through the corridors as hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. The quantum core hummed to life with a sound like reality tearing, its exotic matter beginning to resonate at frequencies that made Marcus's bones ache. On the command center displays, the 3 scout ships moved into attack formation. They were magnificent and terrifying, their hulls shifting between dimensions as they prepared to unleash weapons that could unmake matter itself. Marcus had perhaps minutes before they reduced the station to component atoms. But the quantum core was ready. Marcus initiated the reality cascade with a prayer to whatever gods might still be listening. The core's exotic matter began collapsing inward, creating a gravitational anomaly that pulled spacetime into impossible configurations. The universe around the station warped and twisted as fundamental constants became suggestions rather than laws. The first enemy ship disintegrated as its molecular bonds forgot how to exist. The second found itself scattered across 17 dimensions simultaneously, its crew experiencing death from perspectives that biological minds weren't equipped to process. The third ship tried to retreat, but the cascade effect was spreading faster than light, turning the local spacetime into a probability storm where cause and effect lost all meaning. Marcus felt the station coming apart around him as the quantum core consumed itself in a blaze of exotic energy. Bulkheads twisted into shapes that existed in too many dimensions, and gravity fluctuated wildly as the artificial field generators struggled to maintain coherence in the chaos. He made it to an escape pod just as the core reached critical cascade. The sphere was still in Bay 7, protected by the laboratory's dimensional stabilizers, but Marcus couldn't reach it in time. He sealed himself into the pod and triggered the emergency launch sequence as reality collapsed behind him. The escape pod tumbled away from the station just as the quantum core reached total cascade failure. The explosion wasn't visible in normal space. Instead, the station simply ceased to exist in any meaningful way, along with a significant chunk of the surrounding void. Where Omega 7 had been, only twisted spacetime remained, a scar on reality that would take millions of years to heal. Marcus's pod drifted through the debris field, its emergency beacon broadcasting a distress signal that might never be heard. His scanners showed no trace of the enemy ships. They had been consumed along with the station, scattered across dimensions where the concept of existence held no meaning. But the sphere was gone too, lost in the reality cascade along with all of Webb's research. Marcus felt despair crushing down on him as he realized what he had done. Humanity's only hope against the consuming dark had been destroyed by his own hand, leaving them defenseless against the horror that was coming. Then he remembered the data packets he had uploaded before the battle. Emergency transmissions had been sent to servers throughout human space, containing fragments of the sphere's knowledge encoded in ways that would be invisible to casual observation. The full database was lost, but enough information remained to give humanity a fighting chance. Marcus activated his pod's communication array and began composing messages to recipients across the Terran colonies. Scientists, engineers, military officials, anyone who might have the resources and determination to act on the knowledge he was about to share. Each message was carefully crafted to avoid triggering security algorithms that might be monitored by dark agents. The first transmission went to Dr. Sarah Voss, a quantum physicist on Mars who had published papers on dimensional mechanics that were decades ahead of accepted science. Marcus had never met her, but her research suggested a mind capable of grasping concepts that would drive most people insane. The second message was sent to Admiral Chen Rodriguez, no relation despite the shared surname, who commanded the Terran Defense Fleet from his base on Europa. Rodriguez had a reputation for paranoia and independent thinking that made him a potential ally against infiltrators. Marcus sent dozens of messages over the following hours, each one containing fragments of the sphere's knowledge disguised as theoretical research or mathematical proofs. Taken individually, the data packets were meaningless. But assembled together by the right people, they would provide blueprints for technologies that could transform human civilization. Faster-than-light drives that could cross galactic distances in weeks rather than centuries. Energy shields that could deflect planet-killing weapons. Matter transmutation systems that could turn asteroids into fleets of warships. Most importantly, detection arrays that could identify dark agents regardless of their disguises. The escape pod's life support would last for several days, long enough for a rescue ship to reach his position if any of his messages got through. Marcus used the time to compile detailed technical specifications from his fragmentary memories of the sphere's download. The knowledge was already fading. Human minds weren't designed to hold such vast amounts of information indefinitely, but he could preserve the most crucial elements in written form. On the third day, a Terran patrol ship responded to his distress beacon. The crew of the Valiant Dawn found Marcus half-conscious in his pod, babbling about ancient aliens and galactic threats. They assumed he was suffering from oxygen deprivation and space madness, a common affliction among survivors of catastrophic incidents. Marcus was transferred to a medical facility on Ceres Station, where doctors treated him for malnutrition and trauma-induced psychosis. His stories about reality-warping artifacts and interdimensional enemies were dismissed as delusions brought on by the stress of losing his station. The official report classified the incident as an industrial accident involving an experimental quantum mining system. But Marcus's messages had reached their intended recipients. Dr. Voss found mathematical proofs in her inbox that solved problems she had been working on for years. Admiral Rodriguez received intelligence reports that explained suspicious patterns in recent alien diplomatic missions. Engineers across human space discovered revolutionary designs that seemed to spring from their own research but pushed the boundaries of what they thought possible. Within months, secret research projects began sprouting across the Terran colonies. Scientists worked in isolation, each believing they were pursuing independent breakthroughs that happened to complement work being done elsewhere. None of them realized they were part of a coordinated effort to prepare humanity for a war unlike anything they had ever faced. Marcus remained in the medical facility for 6 weeks before convincing the doctors he was mentally stable enough for release. His claims about the sphere and the consuming dark were classified as persistent delusions, but he no longer spoke of them openly. Instead, he requested assignment to a salvage crew operating in the outer colonies, claiming he wanted to return to the work he knew best. The Terran Bureau of Colonial Affairs found him a position aboard the salvage vessel Second Chance, working routes through the frontier systems where abandoned stations and derelict ships waited to be reclaimed. It was dangerous work that attracted misfits and outcasts, perfect for a man whose reputation had been ruined by tales of alien conspiracies and impossible technologies. Marcus threw himself into the job with enthusiasm that surprised his new crew mates. He seemed to have an uncanny ability to identify valuable salvage and avoid the pirates that plagued the frontier trade routes. What they didn't know was that fragments of the sphere's knowledge still lingered in his mind, giving him insights into technology and tactics that served him well in the lawless regions beyond civilized space. More importantly, the frontier gave Marcus access to individuals who might be valuable allies in the coming war. Independent traders, mercenary captains, colonial militiamen, people who lived outside the official power structures that might be compromised by dark infiltrators. He began building a network of contacts, sharing carefully selected pieces of advanced technology in exchange for loyalty and resources. The first prototype faster-than-light drive was tested in a remote asteroid field 6 months after the Omega-7 incident. The test ship, a converted mining vessel crewed by volunteers from Marcus's network, successfully traveled 12 light-years in 3 minutes before returning to the test site. The technology worked exactly as the sphere's knowledge had predicted. Word of the breakthrough spread through unofficial channels, reaching scientists and engineers who had been working on similar projects across human space. Within a year, multiple research teams had independently developed variations of the FTL drive, each claiming credit for the discovery while secretly knowing they had built upon foundations laid by others. The Terran Defense Fleet acquired its first faster-than-light capable warship 2 years after Marcus found the sphere. Admiral Rodriguez personally commanded the vessel's maiden voyage, a reconnaissance mission to the Galactic Rim where long-range sensors had detected unusual energy signatures. What they found confirmed Marcus's worst fears. Dark Scouts had established a forward base in an uninhabited star system, using technology that violated several laws of physics to construct installations that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The base was empty when the Terran ship arrived, but the evidence of its existence proved that the threat was real and already closer than anyone had imagined. Rodriguez returned from the mission with classified data that circulated among the highest levels of Terran command. Emergency protocols were activated across human space, though the general population remained unaware of the threat. Military production facilities began retooling to build weapons designed from specifications that appeared to have come from nowhere, while research stations worked around the clock to develop defensive technologies that shouldn't have been possible with current scientific understanding. Marcus, meanwhile, had become something of a legend among the frontier salvage crews. His ship was always in the right place at the right time, finding valuable technology that somehow made its way to critical research projects. He seemed to know which systems contained useful materials and which harbored dangers best left undisturbed. Some said he had the best luck in the business, others whispered that he had made deals with powers beyond human understanding. The truth was simpler and more complex. Marcus carried within his mind fragments of knowledge that belonged to a civilization millions of years more advanced than humanity. The sphere's download had burned itself into his neurons in ways that conventional medicine couldn't detect or understand. He was becoming something more than human, though he tried to hide the changes from those around him. His perception of time had expanded, allowing him to see patterns that played out over decades rather than days. His understanding of physics had evolved beyond current human knowledge, letting him predict technological developments before they occurred. Most disturbing, he had begun to sense the presence of dark infiltrators, recognizing them by subtle wrongnesses that normal humans couldn't detect. The enemy agents were everywhere, embedded in governments, corporations, and military organizations throughout the galaxy. They looked like members of their host species but carried within them something that Marcus's enhanced senses recognized as fundamentally hostile to organic life. They were preparing the way for the main invasion, weakening defenses, and sowing division among the galaxy's various civilizations. Marcus used his growing network of contacts to identify and eliminate the infiltrators when possible, though he had to be careful not to reveal the extent of his knowledge. The enemy agents were dangerous individually and became exponentially more threatening when they realized they had been discovered. Several frontier stations had been destroyed in what appeared to be industrial accidents after Marcus's people got too close to embedded infiltrators. The war was already underway, though most of the galaxy's inhabitants didn't realize it yet. It was a shadow conflict fought with assassinations and sabotage rather than fleets and armies. The Dark was patient, content to weaken its enemies from within before revealing its true strength. But Marcus knew that phase was ending. Long-range sensors throughout human space had begun detecting anomalous readings from the galactic rim, energy signatures that matched nothing in any database. The main Dark Fleet was beginning to move, emerging from whatever dimension it used as a staging ground for its assault on the Milky Way. According to the sphere's projections, they had perhaps 5 years before the invasion began in earnest. 5 years to unite a fractured galaxy against an enemy that had never been defeated. 5 years to deploy weapons and defenses that most species couldn't even comprehend. 5 years to transform from scattered, squabbling civilizations into something that could stand against the consuming dark. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Second Chance, watching stars whirl past as his ship traveled between salvage sites. In his mind, he carried the weight of humanity's future and the echo of knowledge from a dead civilization that had failed in this same struggle. But humans were different from the sphere's creators, more adaptable, more stubborn, more willing to fight impossible odds. They would need every advantage they could get in the war that was coming. But for the first time since touching the sphere, Marcus allowed himself to hope that this time might be different. This time, the consuming dark might finally meet its match in the infinite determination of the human spirit. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity would be ready.